Hi everyone, welcome to this beginner's guide to Procreate. Whether you've had Procreate for a while or you just got an iPad and want to check it out, these are all the basics that you need to know in order to start drawing. So let's get into it. So right off the bat, Procreate is an app within the Apple App Store. So you can get this on any of your iPads. This one that I'm using right now is an iPad 7th Gen, and I'm also using the Apple Pencil. You don't necessarily need an Apple Pencil to use Procreate. You can use your finger, you can use another stylus, but the Apple Pencil is the premier method to use it. The first time opening your app, you're going to have a completely blank screen here. This is like your home screen with all of your current projects. Since I've had this for a while, I have a few things. I have them in groups. We'll get to that later. But in order to start a project, you're going to hit the plus over here. These are all the different canvas sizes that are already preloaded. Normally, I go for screen size if I'm just doodling or not really worrying about my project size. But you can also add your own. So if you hit that little thing up there, this brings you to a custom canvas size. So here you have a choice of millimeters, centimeters, inches, and pixels. For most people, we're probably going to use inches. If you're using some sort of print size, you could do that here. If you're drawing and going to be printing your artwork, you want the highest DPI, which is 300. However, the higher DPI you go and the larger your canvas, your maximum amount of layers is going to go down. Say if we take this width to 6 instead of 9, we went from 51 to 78 different layers. All depends on what you're trying to do, but typically you probably want to keep it on a 300 DPI. If you go to the color profile, it's automatically in RGB, but you can change it to CMYK and all these other details if you really care for those. Most of the times, it doesn't really matter though. So I'm going to make an 8.5 by 11 canvas size, and that's going to give me 27 maximum layers. Hit create. And here, if we take two fingers and pinch them in, that zooms in. We take those two fingers and pinch out, it zooms out. If I have this rectangular canvas in portrait and I want to switch it to landscape, I take those two fingers and I rotate it, and then I can zoom in. Quick tip here, if you are getting tired of zooming in and out of your canvas and want to make it full screen, all you have to do is take your two pinching fingers and pinch in really quick, like that. That makes it full screen. So this is your canvas. You have quite a bit going on around here. So first what I'm going to do is I will cover the basics on each of these items and then go further in depth. Right now, if we look here, this blue highlighted button up here, this is your brush library. So this has all of these automatically preloaded brush sets. You should go in here and really play with all of them and get a good understanding of what is in here and what you are capable of doing. All you have to do is click one and start drawing. And some of these might be a little bit too big for what you're doing, and you can change that. But if you're drawing and you make a mistake you want to undo, all you have to do, two fingers, tap. That's it. If you want to redo what you just did, three fingers, tap, redoes it. So if we liked to use that soft pastel brush, but it was a bit too big for us, over here, this is your brush size. You can bring it down, you can bring it back up. And this is your opacity down here. You can have, automatically it's at 100% opacity, but you can bring that down and it goes all the way down. That would be your transparency. So let's bring this to about halfway. And this is what we're looking at. It's a nice soft brush. Next to your brush is your smudge library. So here's the deal, that your smudge and your eraser, which is right there, have all of the same brush libraries. So what happens is, say you're drawing something and you want to smudge it. Right now, you're using the same brush and you can go like that. And that smudges it. You can do a nice little soft smudge. You could do a super hard smudge. And that is based on your pressure on the pen on your tablet. So this is a super soft, and then we go really hard. Also depends on your speed as well. So if you're doing a lot of gradation in your drawing, this is a great tool to use. Next is your eraser library, which is the same as all of your brushes. But the thing is that you can have different erasers happening at the same time as a brush. So say we brought that size up, we're doing all this with, this is the Narinder pencil, and say we want to erase with, say, a soft airbrush. I'm going to bring that opacity back up again. We can. So you can be using two different brush styles at the same time. Same with your smudge if you chose to use that as well. Now next to your eraser is the layers menu. So this is where you're going to have all the different layers of your drawing. You can change them, you can add to them. So here, no matter what, when you start out on a new project, you have one layer and your background color. So your background color with these check marks, you can turn it on and off. So you can see if you're drawing something in a lighter color on another layer, you can turn your background color off and on. If you want to change your background color, you tap the square and you can bring up this color wheel and do whatever you want. You can make it green, you can make it purple, anything that you want to do. To add another layer, you hit the plus button and you can rearrange your layers by clicking and holding and moving it around. We will do more in the layers section in a little while. Next to layers is your color picker. So you click that, you have this whole color wheel. You'll have the history of all the colors that you've recently used, which is a new feature, which is so helpful. And then this is a basic color palette that I use for my projects. You can also choose to view this in different ways. So here we have classic, where you're dealing with more of hues and such. Harmony, which is a 3-color picker. So it makes complementary colors. Your values are the HSB, RGB modes, and also your hex codes are here as well, which is very helpful. Then the last thing over here are the palettes. So you can create palettes, you can make palettes from photos, from projects. It's very helpful. So these are all the color palettes that I currently have saved. And then this top one here is my basic that I see all the time. Now for our other menus, we hit this little wrench over here, and that's our action menu. So you have a bunch of different choices up here and these choices. So your actions add would be inserting photos, inserting text, cut and copy, basic things. We'll go into those a little bit more later. Then your canvas. So say you have an 8.5 by 11 canvas and you want to change the size of it to 6 by 9, you can do that here. If you want to have a drawing guide, click that, and it creates a grid on all layers, but it will not be shown when you go to save it as a file. So you can edit this. You can edit the grid size, you can edit the center placement, also the thickness of the lines, the opacity, and the color. Depending on what your project is, you can make it an opposite color from what you're working on. You can also do isometric and perspective guides and also symmetrical guides. So this would mean that if that's your line of symmetry, anything that you draw over here is mirrored there. And you can edit this in the options. You can make it horizontal, you can do a quadrant or radial. For now, I'm just going to turn this off though, because for this exercise, we don't necessarily need it, but that is where you find it. Actions, Canvas Drawing Guide. If you want to flip your canvas horizontal or vertical, you can do that. For your canvas information, this tells you who made it, when, your dimensions, your layers, color profile, and everything such as that. If you want to save your image as a PNG, a PDF, or even a Photoshop file, you can do that in the Share Image. If you want to share a specific layer, you can also do that as well. with animations and all sorts of things, which we'll get to in another video. In the video section, you can record and view a time-lapse replay of your entire drawing. That's really cool. Then we have preferences. So, say if I zoom out a little bit and you see how this background here is black, if I want it to be white, I choose a light interface. That could be really nice. I personally don't love it, so I keep it off. If you want to have your sliders for your brush size and opacity on the right side, if you click that, if you're a righty, that's not really optimal because you could be brushing into that, no pun intended. If you turn brush cursor on, that means that you see the little dot of your brush as you're using it. Everything else in here I don't really touch very often except for gesture controls. Gesture controls allow you to set your preferences pretty much like your hotkeys when you're not using a keyboard. So in general here, which is at the very bottom, you can disable touch actions. So that would mean that you can only use this program with a pencil. If you touch it, if you go to use your finger to draw, if you use your fingers to undo or any of those types of actions, it will not be allowed. Personally, I like to be able to do the double touch to undo. Rotating with pinch zoom, that's what I talked about before, that's very important. All of these other things here are really to your preference, and you'll just have to go and play around and figure out what works for you, especially the quick menu. I'm not going to talk about it right now because those are very personalized preferences, but you can have copy, paste, swiping, all sorts of things there. I don't use it, but I know a lot of people who do and a lot of people who like it. Then the last thing in this action menu is help. The greatest thing about this is they have the Procreate Handbook, which will open up. You can find everything that you want to know out about Procreate in this handbook and also in the support pages as well. Next to that is adjustments. Now this is where you can do all of your color changing, your gradients, all blurs, and texturizing to your drawing. I'm going to draw something really quick here, and then I'm going to go up to this thing that looks like an S. So right now, this brings up this menu here, automatic freehand, rectangle, and ellipse. If I choose freehand, I can draw on this and it brings up my marquee. I can copy and paste that and move it around. I can flip it, I can rotate it. You can rotate no matter what you'd want to do. You can fit to canvas. You can distort it. You can warp it. You can do so many different things in this little menu. So mind you that anytime you do a copy paste, it's going to go in another layer called from selection. So now we can either delete that first layer by swiping over and hitting delete. We can duplicate it, we can lock it. For this instance, I will delete both of those. You can't delete your first layer. Your first layer will always be there, but you can clear it if you want to. So really this menu with the S, this is your selection marquee. Then if you go up to here where there's the cursor, it does something pretty similar here. So this is where you can do your flipping, rotating, you can move it around your canvas. As long as there's the little dotted line marquee there, you can do that. You can distort this here or in your free selection. So now that we have the basics covered, we can go in a little bit more in depth and talk about our brushes. So right now, we are using the Narinder pencil in the sketching category. There are so many other categories and so many different brushes. Personally, if you go into calligraphy, I like to use the monoline pen because this is a very simple, round, easy to use brush. You can use this to write, you can use it to draw a sun, you can use it for anything. It's a really solid brush. Say you're not really great at making straight lines, circles, or squares. You can do these all with your pen to make them perfect. Here's how. To make your perfect line, draw it, and without picking up your pencil, hold it, and it will make your perfect line, and that way you can move your ends around. To make a circle, you do the same exact thing. You hold your pen down, and then it says ellipse created. You let go, edit shape. So now this is currently an ellipse or an oval, but if I wanted to make it a circle, I'd hit circle. If you toggle these blue dots, that changes the physical shape of it. So now we have an ellipse again, we can still hit circle. If we drag between the dots, that changes the size of our object. You can do a square or a rectangle with the same premise. Draw, keep your pen down, and hit edit shape. Right now, those blue dots are not connected, so I'm going to click one of them and drag it onto the other one, just so it's a little bit easier to deal with. So right now this is a polyline. We can make it a rectangle, but your lines still aren't connected. But if you wanted to and you had the grid on, you can make these lines according to your grid lines. You could make it some sort of other polygon shape. If you want to add a font, you go to the little wrench icon here, which is Actions, go to Add, and Add Text. This automatically brings up your keyboard, and you can say Procreate. And then if you want to change your font and font size and all those other details, double tap, and you can either select it, or I do select all. And then this is your font, that's your font type, and your justifications. So I'm going to hit that, and this is going to bring up the font menu. So I have a variety of fonts in here, but most of these fonts are indeed what are included in Procreate. So these would be what is included on the iPad to begin with. And we can make this one, or this one. And some fonts might have a style. You can have italics, bold, bold italics. Some fonts don't. This is where you can change your size, kerning, tracking, leading. A lot of this you can play with on your own. It depends on what font you're using. So if you have your font here, but you want to make it bigger or smaller, what do? Make sure that your font layer is selected, and then you can click on it. This makes it wider, but you can also go up to the little mouse icon and you click and drag to make it larger or smaller, or put it anywhere around the canvas. Speaking of which, why is this snapping? How do you get it to snap? How do you get it to unsnap? In this menu down here, under Uniform, there is a snapping icon. If you hit that, I have magnetics on. Otherwise, if we had magnetics off, we could move this freely around the canvas, but we can still get our center lines. Those center lines are brought to you by snapping. If we took that off, you have total free range. For this next exercise, I'm going to go into my layers. And so just so you know that whenever you add in a font, it's going to be on its own separate layer. So you can combine layers if you wanted to by taking your two layers, or however many layers, and pinching in with two fingers. So pinch in, and it creates one layer. Again, if we want to undo that, tap with two fingers. So on my other layer, I'm going to do a few little squiggles. I'm going to go here. I'm going to change my color to something like that. So this is just to help illustrate how the layers work. So I'm going to make a new layer that's going to go on top of Procreate. I'm going to do another, let's do green. So let's discuss this green layer. The top layer is at the front of the artboard. So if we take layer 3, which is our green squiggle, and we bring it and drag it below Procreate, it goes below Procreate, but it is still above the blue and red squiggles. If we take blue and red squiggles and put it above the green squiggle, there you go. If you put Procreate all the way at the bottom, again, this is by clicking and dragging, Procreate is at the bottom of the layer pile. Say I want to fill in the interior areas of this text. What should I do? Make a new layer, click your color, and you can draw in. Oh no, it's too big. What do? Undo that, make the brush smaller, and you can color in here. But you want to color in on the right layer. So you go to your layers and your fill layer, you click, you drag it below Procreate. So now you have like a fill in the blank color layer underneath your text. But what if you want to do a design and draw over only the black outline of the font? How do you do that? Again, you go into your layers. I just undid whatever I had on that previous layer. So you have a clean layer above your text. So I'm gonna increase my brush. I'm gonna do a little something, something like that. Then you go back to this. Then you just click on that layer and it brings up all of these options here. So if you wanted to, you could copy only what is currently on this layer, paste it into another document. You can paste it somewhere else in the drawing. That's kind of helpful. You can automatically clear everything on your layer without deleting it. Then my two favorites, we have Alpha Lock and the clipping mask. We'll get to those in a minute. Then if you want to invert it, makes it purple. That's kind of cool. But I'm going to undo that. Then we click. You can merge down, you can combine it with the previous layers, the layers underneath. For this instance, I'm going to do the clipping mask. Whoa, that's pretty cool, isn't it? So how this works is that your bottom layer here is your base layer. And you see that little arrow? Whatever we have drawn on the layer above in the clipping mask only shows up in the areas that this bottom layer exists. So we can continue drawing, but we're only going to see it where there is something on that linked layer. So you want to undo that. You want to have that green on a layer, it's all its own, and you want to see all the green. You click on that layer again, you turn off clipping mask. Then you have your original color blob. Say you want to fill in whatever font or shape you have, but you don't feel like making a certain layer. You don't feel like having this extra step. What do? We can delete that. We have the font, and we just want to color in the font with whatever design we want to do. So we click that. We hit rasterize. Now this takes it from an editable text to an image. This way we can draw on it. So we click it again and we go into Alpha Lock. You're going to see that it's an Alpha Lock when your little preview is like black and gray checkered. So now we can draw in this, but it's only going to be within the confines of the lines. So that's what it's looking like. You cannot edit this after it's complete. After you take Alpha Lock off, you can't draw on that anymore. When you're drawing, say you have some shapes, some blobs, and to fill them in, it might take a long time to manually color this in. So how do you get it to autofill? Let's see. You go to your colors over here, you click and drag into the area, and that's it. That's an autofill. Say you want to do some shading inside of this shape, but you don't feel like doing a separate layer, then doing a clipping mask and all that. So what do? You tap, you make this, you put this in Alpha Lock mode. Then we take our color, and I'm going to bring it down a little bit so it's a darker color. And then you can draw inside of your shape without getting on any other objects. So if you want to do some shading, let's see, let's go to calligraphy and the chalk brush, which is kind of fun. And you can just gently add some shading. Now, a lot of these brushes work with specific pressure points. So if I'm using more pressure, more of the brush is used. But as soon as I lighten up on the pressure, the size of the brush is affected as well as the opacity. I have drawn this absolutely beautiful work of art. What do I do now that I'm finished with my project? Go up to your Actions menu, Share, and you can save this as a Photoshop file, a PDF, a JPEG, or a PNG. I'll click a PNG. It exports it, and then you have all these options here, which is typical for any Apple product. And I just do Save Image, and this will be saved in your photos. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer them. Happy drawing!